What is, physically and magically, the biggest shield in Final Fantasy XIV Dawntrail? There sure are a lot of shields in the game, ranging from small to large to huge to small with a huge magical shield attached and, of course, invisible, and everything in between. Let's see if we can determine the biggest shield, relatively speaking, because it's hilarious. Starting with the honorable mention, House Fortemps' Kite Shield, which is, of course, the emotionally biggest shield in Final Fantasy XIV. Admittedly, in terms of physical size though, it is a very average kite shield that is effectively just a reskin of one of the most common shield shapes in the whole game. Now, with the honorable mention out of the way, let's very briefly talk about how this ranking works. We are measuring shields primarily, if not exclusively, on their visual width and height. While a shield might be super thick, that rarely leads to an overall big shield in perceived appearance due to the way we angle it for combat. Since we only care about width and height, if the magical effects of a shield contributes to the size of the shield, that counts too. Whether by having a glow making it seem a bit wider, or weird swirly lines adding to the overall size, it counts. Additionally, due to a lot of shields being particularly slim and tall or short and stout, extra points, quote-unquote, will be counted for simply being extra tall or wide, so we don't miss these extremes entirely in the contest. Finally, the ranking is made with a very scientific method known as I measured it with my eyes. So in some cases, this might be very subjective, but in my defense, have you seen how many shields there are? And how many are identical in that whole mess? Sometimes I had to simply choose one. Now, let's have a look at the biggest shields in Final Fantasy XIV Dawntrail. Number 10. Mighty Thunderhead. This is the flashier remake of the regular Thunderhead from the Ramuh Extreme trial. As a result of having extra glow, it has slightly more overall size to it. The model is also shared with the Kina shield from Palace of the Dead. However, in my opinion, Mighty Thunderhead's more consistent electric glow leads to a bigger frame than the dark glow of the Kina shield. What allows the shield to compete is the total height of the shield from tip to tip, and then it has slightly more girth compared to other similar height shields. The shield is either acquired randomly through Palace of the Dead gold sacks, or by crafting the combined Paladin's Mighty 11 arms, which can be done by either an armorer or a blacksmith, as long as you have acquired the Master 2 recipes for the appropriate crafter. Number 9. The Bladed Lantern Shield. That's right, some rando shield from A Realm Reborn with no magical effects on it. It looks like a somewhat average-sized round shield, and then we strapped 2 whole swords to it for some reason. The shield doesn't really do anything on the height side of things, but the sheer width provided by a whole sword strapped through the thing makes it technically wider than most shields in the game if we discuss just the width alone by technicality. Which we are, because I am. And I will be a bit pedantic, because it is funny that this kind of shield even exists. It is an easily crafted level 39 shield made, of course, by an armorer with no special materials needed. Alternatively, the history books tell of an ethereal version of the shield. However, I don't think ethereal shields can be acquired anymore. If you prefer the shield in red, the Luminsen Lantern shield can be bought for company seals from the Maelstrom. And if you like it more bluish, the Mithrite Bladed Lantern shield can both be bought straight from vendors or crafted. You can also get it in a black variant as the Flame Sergeant shield from the Immortal Flames Grant Company. Number 8. Storm and Flame Sergeant's Targe, as well as the Thalassian Targe. The whole category of Targe-style shields are really tall, but a select few have a little spike on the top and bottom that just so happen to stretch these shields just far enough to be the tallest shields in the game, barely stretching past Mighty Thunderhead spikes. They don't really do much in the width department though, which is why they only rank 8th. For the Storm and Flame Sergeant's Targes, you simply need some company seals for the appropriate company. Notably, the Serpent Targe does not have the spikes, which is why it is not included here. The Thalassian Targe is a drop from Thousand Maws of Totarak, and this was the last shield in the rankings that directly share exact models across multiple shields. That said, that doesn't mean we won't see some very similar looking shields in the rest of the rankings. Number 7. The Alexandrian Metal Buckler. Obtained from A12S Alexander Savage, this is a bigger shield base than the Bladed Lantern shield, supported this time, instead, by 2 huge daggers attached to the edge of the shield, resulting in an incredibly wide shield, again, by technicality. Something rather funny about this shield is that it has no stats in common with the sword it is supposed to match with, aside from strength and vitality, of course. The sword offering critical hit and skill speed, while the shield provides determination and tenacity. At the time, this would instead have been parry chance, I believe, which is somewhat ironic for a shield to provide, considering you cannot block and parry at the same time anyway. This also means this is, by technicality, the biggest Savage Raid shield. That, at least, isn't beaten by an even bigger counterpart. Number 6. Ultimate Edenmorn Scutum. The shield acquired from Future's rewritten Ultimate, based on the very pretty Edenmorn Scutum from E12S, Eden's Promise Eternity Savage, which itself is a decently sized Scutum-style shield, but not exactly huge. But then we add this light and dark magic effect around the shield with wings and everything, resulting in a significantly taller and wider shield. When I glanced at this shield for the first time across this huge list, I actually thought it was meant to be book-inspired, so before I looked at its name, I assumed it would have been from, I don't know, Pilgrim's Traverse? And you can probably see the writing on the wall, and by wall, I of course mean huge shields, considering how much magical effects can add to the perceived size of a shield. Number 5. Empyrean Shield. A hot glowing version of the high elegant Kite shield, which itself is a relatively common and large shield with some spikes added on the bottom part of the shield. Perhaps not surprising is the fact that the sword that is meant to accompany the shield is also very long to match. The Empyrean Shield is acquired from Aetherpole arms from Heaven on High, so somewhat grindy. Meanwhile, the High Elegant Kite Shield is acquired from T9, the second Coil of Bahamut turn 4, or Nail Deus Danus, and indeed, the replica version is both craftable and tradable, and largely require materials from that very same fight in some form or another. Number 4. Ultimate Dreadwyrm Shield. A brightly glowing version of the Dreadwyrm shield, which, while having a very unique design, gives a similar shape to the prior Empyrean shield, instead emphasizing the top size and width rather than having spikes, thanks to the wings on the shield. Admittedly, the size is extremely similar, so it could come down to what you personally emphasize, which one comes out on top. The Ultimate Dreadwyrm shield of course comes from the Unending Coil of Bahamut Ultimate, or UCOB, and the regular version comes from T13, the final Coil of Bahamut turn 4, or Bahamut from A Realm Reborn. Personally, I mainly prefer the ultimate version of this shield because it strongly hides this almost like muscle-like effect on the center of the regular version of the shield that looks a bit weird to me. And now we're moving into the top 3. Number 3. Ultimate Omega Shield, which, while a flashier version of the Omega Shield from O12S, is, unlike the previous entries, actually vastly wider, as the extra details and effects on the shield add a huge amount of detail on one side, while being a lot more tame on the other. This one also gains more of its size from width, being only slightly slimmer than the technicality that is the Alexandrian Metal Buckler. A detail I find very fascinating about this one is also how the sheer amount of detail added with magic effect sort of moves the center point away from the face on the shield and closer to this sort of centerpiece where all this chaos meets. Almost as if you took 2 or even 3 shields and smooshed them together to produce this weird yet awesome looking thing. Number 2. Ultimate Shield of the Heavens. With a name that kinda sounds like it is doubling down, being both the Shield of the Heavens and Ultimate. This is of course the shield from Dragonsong's Reprieve Ultimate, and is a much flashier version of both the Shield of the Heavens and the flashed up version Shield of the Round, making it probably the biggest tower shield or Scutum in the game. And then the huge round magic effect around the shield greatly enhances the width of the shield, leading us to the big winner. Number 1. Holy Shield Ultima. I guess it makes sense that the one shield that is actually an ultimate version of a relic would be the greatest, biggest, fattest shield in the game. What else could possibly compete? Indeed, Holy Shield Ultima shares its base model with the A Realm Reborn Relic Shield from Holy Shield to Holy Shield Nexus, but then adds funny, swirly magic effects far out around the weapon, which I think perfectly punctuates this ranking, as while these swirlies are thin, they technically make the shield extremely wide, and also slightly taller actually. It is also worth noting that it shares a similar shape to both the Empyrean Shield and the Dreadwyrm Shield, sort of an extra wide Kite shield, which already gives it a lot of bigness to it. Now, I of course did not use a proper mathematical comparison to find the biggest shield, so admittedly this is probably heavily impacted by my opinion. But in my defense, have you seen how many shields there are? Not to mention how many are basically the same shield, but this one has a little doobly-doob on the top, and that one has a rose shape in the center, and that one has a little extra handle on the side. And with the tools available to me, calculating the most voluminous shield would be almost impossible. So, with the excuses out of the way, what is your favorite shield in Final Fantasy XIV? And what, in your opinion, is the biggest shield? Do let me know in the comments. Now, that is all for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you would like to support me and my channel more directly, you can become a member like these wonderful people here. You can also alternatively support me through Twitch or Ko-Fi. Links in the description. You can also support the channel by letting the YouTube algorithm know by liking the video, leaving a comment, subscribing, sharing, and hitting the bell to get notified when next I post a video. Fun fact: back in the day, block rate and strength varied heavily between shields, with smaller and thinner shields emphasizing rate while dropping strength, and big shields favoring strength while losing rate. Sheltron originally made you block the next attack, and it probably comes as no surprise that blocking the most important thing most effectively is way more important than maintaining the average, which made strength far more important than rate. This eventually led to all shields getting normalized strength and rate.